It's bright and early on Monday, day 136, which is the 6th of January 2020. This is the day traditionally people go back to work. Still dark outside, pretty depressing. And in fact, this morning, I need to get in the car. I'm I'm a guest on the local radio station, reading the papers. So I'm going to do the morning commute with everybody else, which should be interesting. I can imagine I'll see some glum faces on the first day back to work today. Interesting, I guess, overnight activity on Friday with the news of political unrest in the Middle Eastern area, Iran and America. Then there'd been a flight to Japanese yen, a flight to safe haven currencies, and a move away from Australian dollar and New Zealand dollar. So that had hurt my SIG1 trades, but interestingly overnight and this morning, the Japanese yen bids seem to be weakening off, and there seems to be a move back towards Australian dollar, New Zealand dollar. So, if you've got the longer term trend, it's important you stick with that trend. You're going to take some pain along the way, and perhaps I've just taken some pain along the way. But, that weekly position, I've got 3 weekly trades on. 2 are fully protected. 1 has profit locked in. So we'll wait and see what happens by this time next week. In terms of the intraday activity, there's no signal showing up as yet. There could potentially be a little bit later on with my MAG7 indicator now, basically considering on the cross currency pairs, the synthetic pairs, commodity synthetic pairs, I consider the relative relationship of the major pairs that comprise any of the cross or synthetic pairs. Sounds quite complicated. It's not really. So I only trade in the direction that those, what the major pairs are telling me in terms of the cross pair. So that's I've been doing this for, I think, a couple of months now. That's restricted the number of opportunities that I look at, which is good because it regulates my behavior in the marketplace. But there's potentially a couple of signals showing up, but I'll check in on that a little bit later on. So got to rush off to this interview this morning on the radio. Get back hopefully by the 10 a.m. close, probably just after, to review that, and we'll see how the news pans out. As always, just to say, I don't trade the news. I kind of ignore the news, but when the news shows up in the price action, it can sometimes explain that price action. But I protect myself from the news. I don't trade it. Wow, can't quite believe it. It's 8 a.m. It's still dark. It's cold. First day back at work for everybody. Good luck, everybody. It's never an easy day. So let's head off to the radio station and get ready to be a guest on the show. So Monday night around about 8:15, and been quite a busy day in the markets. Just goes to show that you have to kind of take the news with a pinch of salt and always trade the price action. So today I entered a long position on Australian dollar, Japanese yen, because a signal showed up. I'll put that on the screen in a minute. But with all the political tensions internationally at the moment, you would probably think that Japanese yen was the currency to buy. Instead, I sold that and bought Australian dollar. The last time I looked, I might be wrong now, but the last time I looked, having entered that trade on the 10 a.m. candle close, that trade was in profit. Also entered a short position on US dollar, Swiss franc. Just looking at that now. I'll put that on the screen in a second. Again, intraday strategy. That trade looks to be progressing well. That's on a full house strategy. Australian dollar, Japanese yen long. I've started a new strategy now, so a third trend strategy called, I call it backbone. It's effectively what's happening. I'm looking for opportunities where price has tested and rejected a simple moving average on the 240 chart that corresponds to a daily trend line, and I'll show that in a second. So been quite a busy day. SIG1 trades, kind of sideways action It's quite a difficult market at the moment with lots of uncertainty. But you trade the plan, trade the system, stick to the rules. That's what the game is all about. And one day, this day, it's first day of the week. There's plenty more time this week. You don't need many winning trades each month to make a profit. Just got to follow those rules and stick to the discipline. So here's that US dollar Swiss franc short. What you can see here, I entered on the first YX short candle. Got some bid pressure just off my entry. Then got another YX candle. So the pressure looks to be on the 240 chart downwards. It's the same story on the daily trend line there. So looking to hit the initial target on a 1-to-1 reward to risk ratio. And then here's the Australian dollar Japanese yen long. You can see the 200 simple moving average on the 240 chart. It looks quite messy on the 240 chart, but I'll show you the daily in a moment. Basically bought off the S rejection candle. That corresponded with the 200 simple moving average and also the daily trend line, which is the golden line. I entered the first position I entered. I got the wrong, miscalculated the wrong risk amount, so entered a second position fairly quickly and holding that trade. In terms of the daily chart, if I jump into that, you'll see that there's kind of a corresponding position there. If you look at this here on the daily chart, the 50 simple moving average, that's the backbone there. It's not a requirement to have the backbone on the daily chart, but it's nice to see it when it's there. And that 50 simple moving average looks to be rising up and potentially about to cross the daily 200 simple moving average, which would be a pretty good signal that there's more long side potential. Going to look to take off my 50% of my position about halfway at the top there. But for the moment, this trade is panning out quite well, given the fact that if you'd have thought about this trade based solely on the news, you probably wouldn't have taken it. You probably would have been a buyer of Japanese yen, a seller of Australian dollar Japanese yen. But just goes to show you've got to trade the signals, ignore the news, protect yourself from the news. But it's one of the reasons I don't trade on the news. It's impossible to process all of the information out there. The only thing you can process and interpret, because it's all priced in, is price action itself. Well, good afternoon. It is Tuesday, around about 5 to 5. Pretty late jumping on the video. Was up at the crack of dawn this morning for the morning market analysis. Been to jiu-jitsu at lunchtime, so aching a bit but feeling pretty good. Always helps with the mental state that you need for currency trading. To get away, to do some exercise is always good, particularly given the fact that the two intraday trades that I placed yesterday, Australian dollar Japanese yen long and US dollar Swiss franc short, are both now under pressure. They show their heads in terms of going in favor, order flow in favor of the direction of my trade, but have reversed a little bit today. Yeah, I need to consider what to do with those at the moment. US dollar Swiss franc, that looks to be okay. It looks to be forming a consolidation, which could push down lower when the time is right. Australian dollar Japanese yen, slightly more worrying. There could be a close below the daily 50 simple moving average today. If that's the case, then although I'm not stopped out, it's probably a good time for me to cut my losses and get out. There's the phone. Should have turned that off. Never mind. So the wife will get that. So let's have a quick look at those now, and yeah, will be some decisions to make a little bit later on this evening. So here's US dollar Swiss franc. Looks like a slight consolidation now, although we are testing the 50 simple moving average. This is on the 240 chart, so really nothing to worry about here at the moment. The trade showed an initial profit, pushed down in the direction of my trade, so I can hold it. Yeah, not too concerned about this. I think we'll get a push down to the bottom of the daily trend line, but as always, time will tell. So Australian dollar Japanese yen on the 240 chart, pushed down below the 200 simple moving average, which is a concern, about halfway to my stop. But what's more interesting is what's happening on the daily chart. So here on the daily chart, testing below the 200 simple moving average and the 50 simple moving average. If we get a close below both on tonight, then I'm probably out of this trade. Probably will cut my losses and get out. We're at that decision point, halfway to my stop loss. And I think the fact that there's been a close below both of those levels is a clue that the market could be turning bearish. So that would mean an exit and possibly a short entry if a signal shows up on the intraday chart. So there you have it. Slightly frustrating on both counts, but that's the nature of the beast. If US dollar Swiss franc turns around, that could be a very profitable trade if that trend continues. And my job in the interim, if Australian dollar Japanese yen doesn't start to play ball by the end of today, is to cut my losses. So I may lose a little bit on Australian dollar Japanese yen, but if I gain more on US dollar Swiss franc, then that's absolutely fine. You got to win more when you win and lose less when you lose. So that's what I'll be watching for a little bit later on this evening. Well, good evening, I guess you could say, or good afternoon. It is Wednesday, around about 5:05. I plan to get on the video a little bit earlier on, just to document what's been going on today. And today it's been a whipsaw of news. When I woke up this morning, my Australian dollar Japanese yen, although it was clawing back, was still under pressure. There was retaliation from Iran on American bases in the region. So political unrest meant uncertainty and risk-off attitude in the marketplace, which was hurting New Zealand dollar, Australian dollar. Anyway, just as you've seen the news just on the screen then, apparently Iran is standing down. That's the latest news. As a result, bids have flown into Australian dollar, New Zealand dollar. So the SIG1 trades that I had on earlier in the, for the last couple of weeks look to be back on track, at least for the moment. The other thing that Trump has said is that the US doesn't rely on Middle Eastern oil. So, you know, Canadian dollar, etc., had benefited from, I think, well, you never know, but I think it benefited from the fact that there was a risk of oil shortages. So anyway, with that all said, it just shows the whipsaw nature of the news. I go into Forex factory forums quite often, not really to comment. In fact, I never comment, but just to read what people are saying. And the general consensus is, I think, that we've kind of heard all of this kind of news before. Is the news there to manipulate the markets? Who knows? Is it one day good, next day bad, one day good, next day bad? Absolutely. So I try and ignore the news. I don't trade it. What I'm looking for is to follow the trend. So I stayed in Australian dollar Japanese yen overnight. If we get a close back above the daily SMA, that will be good news today. US dollar Swiss franc, that is in a significant downtrend. All of my signals are pointing south on that. There's kind of been some bids, as you've just seen on screen, going into that, but I think that's short-lived. I think the sellers will come back in at the top of the daily trend line, which is down. But I may need to lighten up on my position, my full house strategy, if the 10 exponential moving average crosses back over the 30 exponential moving average. But I'll wait and see what happens on the 6 p.m. close. But for the moment, kind of the stress of the last 24 hours seems to be dissipating, and things look to be back on track. Well, good morning. It is day 139. Big struggle to get up this morning. It is cold, wet, and yeah, not the best weather outside. You kind of wake up and it's dark. You kind of, in the end of the day, you're doing your work or whatever. I was going to say come back home, but I generally work from home. And it's dark as well. So yeah, I'm looking forward to the warmer months coming. Having said that, it's 9th of January already. Where does the time go? Can't quite believe New Year was over a week ago. Anyway, into the trading stuff, and I'm just looking over my left, well, not over my left shoulder, but to my left. What a difference a day makes. And yesterday, the tensions in the Middle East seem to have calmed down. If I look at my relative strength, New Zealand dollar, Australian dollar, bids back into them, and the weakest performer yesterday, according to my daily relative strength, was Japanese yen. Japanese yen, of course, a safe haven currency. The day before, I think the Japanese yen had been pretty strong. There was bids in the yen as there was a flight to safe haven currencies, as people anticipated increased escalation of issues in the Middle East, particularly between Iran and the US, but that seems to have calmed. Canadian dollar has also weakened, so the threat of reduced oil and whatnot appears to have gone away, at least for the time being. And really, this is kind of testament to how the markets are behaving at the moment. It's kind of whipsaw action back and forth in response to surprise news. And surprise news is when Trump usually tweets something that's not expected. It's not in the economic calendar, which you can find published at FOREX Factory. So in terms of my trades, got 2 intraday trades on. My Australian dollar Japanese yen trade closed back above the 200 simple moving average yesterday on the daily chart, and is looking to be performing pretty well today. So I took some heat, but look to be back at my entry now with a view to entering profit mode, hopefully. US dollar Swiss franc, bit more frustrating trade, and this appears to be forming a consolidation, a range on the 240 chart. I can't class it as a range unless there's a range on the daily chart. But while my simple moving average and exponential moving average signals have told me that I should be out, the fact that we're forming this range, the fact that the IG sentiment index is S star, which means that the majority of traders are bid in this pair, which means taking a contrarian view, I need to be short. That tells me that I should probably hold on for just a little bit longer. I'm fairly near my stop anyway. So I'm going to hold this trade a little bit longer to see if this trades down to the bottom of the range, which actually corresponds with my entry. So anyway, not going to be monitoring the charts very closely at all today. I've got a fairly long journey to Manchester. I'll explain more about that in a moment. But got to drive up to Manchester. Got a meeting at 12 o'clock, then got a long drive back. Weather's not particularly good. I'm going to jump in the shower and get ready now. I'm going to leave pretty early to give myself a chance to get up there. So it's going to be an interesting day. So all suited and booted and ready for my trip to Manchester. So after a pretty long drive up to Manchester, left at about 8 o'clock this morning, got here about 5 to 11, just had a quick stop off to get a coffee, wherever it is, coffee. I'm going to here an hour early, hour early, not earlier, an hour early. Just check the markets and still in all of my positions. Not much has happened, not much seems to be moving, which seems to be the situation at the moment. So here I'm up in Manchester, all suited and booted. I'm doing a casting audition for an agency that supplies people for ITV, BBC, film production type stuff as extras. Something I thought about doing, goodness me, about 20 odd years ago, never did. Know a guy from the gym that gets a load of work doing this, a load of interesting stuff. He's done stuff with Sky and all sorts of stuff. So anyway, signed up with this or registered with this agency about, goodness me, so long ago I can barely remember, about 8 months ago. Heard nothing, and then a few days ago got an email to say, hey, can you come up to Manchester Thursday or Friday this week for a casting audition, whatever that means. So what I've got to do, they told me to dress like I kind of normally dress, which is kind of how I do normally dress for business, not when I'm at home, of course. So I've got the suit, I've got some stuff in the back of the car, t-shirts and jeans and all sorts of stuff. Apparently they're going to take some photographs. I'm then going to be on their app, and these production companies can browse my profile. If they like the look of me, they can book me for extra work. Who knows? Apparently Jason Statham, that's how he got started doing this. So you never know. But I've been looking for something for a little while to fill in perhaps a couple of days a week. Trading is not a full-time job. If it is a full-time job, you're probably a day trader, not a great thing to be doing. If you're not a day trader and it's a full-time job, you're a swing trader or a long-term trader. If you sat in front of your screens watching what's going on, you'll drive yourself insane. So having a distraction, I have jiu-jitsu. Hopefully I'll have this if things go well today, and one or two other things that I do is a pretty good idea. So I'm quite keen to get in there. I've got another hour to sit and wait. I'll sit in the car yeah, I'll check in and see how things have gone on in a bit. So casting all done, only took 20 minutes. Measurements, ID, and a few photographs. They like me in the suit, so they kept me in the suit, didn't have to do a costume change. So now just wait and see what comes in, but quite an interesting experience, and yeah, see if I get casted in anything. So it's Friday morning and pretty tired after, there's the time, 5 to 6. Pretty tired after yesterday's trip up to Manchester and back. Only a short visit, but we'll see what comes of it. Quite exciting thing to add to my portfolio of stuff that I do. Another string to the bow. But yeah, I shall wait to get my first casting job when it comes in. But thank goodness for coffee this morning. I've got a really busy day. I've got a meeting first thing. I've got a networking lunch. And then I've got another meeting, and then I've got a career coaching session at back end of the day that I'm delivering. So yeah, it's going to be a long day, but looking forward to it. Didn't sleep very well last night. So let's have the coffee. Let's get into the markets and see what's been happening overnight. There's a lesson there. Never try and read a clock backwards. Using the camera on your phone is actually 5 past 6, not 5 to 6. Hey ho, never mind. And anyway, if you focus on the minutes, that's important. Actually, on that point, what I read a few days ago, one of these New Year articles, is that successful people focus on the minutes, not the hours. So I'm trying to make the most of every single minute. You know, when you've got 2 or 3 minutes, 4 or 5 minutes before you've got to do something, and you kind of sit and wait for that thing to happen. What this article said was you should use that time wisely, so that's what I'm trying to do. So the fact that I lost 10 minutes there, not so great, but means I need to be faster this morning because I've got to be in the shower at 7, out the house at 7:30, and then on the road. So this morning, just partway through the morning market analysis, and Australian dollars moved to bids, I think possibly on the back of positive retail sales results that are out. There was also some good news yesterday, I think, in relation to, let's just check this out now. Where are we? In relation to trade balance, there we go. So Australian dollar back to bids, which has helped my Australian dollar Japanese yen long my SIG1 Australian dollar CAD and my SIG1 Australian dollar US dollar. Yeah, good news. But today is non-farm payrolls out of the US at lunchtime. That will impact the dollar probably one way or another. I think the market has priced in some quite favourable employment results, so I think there's a risk there that US dollar could be, there could be a bearish impact on US dollar if those expectations aren't met, which will be pretty good, in fact, for all of my trades. So yeah, we'll watch and see what happens, but a little while to wait on that, and got to finish this this market analysis. In fact, check out this particular scenario. So this morning, my Mag 7 indicator is all bullish on the majors and all avoid on the synthetics. So synthetics, commodity synthetics. So no intraday opportunities on the cross pairs. I'm still in my Australian dollar, Japanese yen long on intraday. and also US dollar Swiss franc short on intraday. But that's quite an interesting scenario there. Pretty much everything bullish. Doesn't happen that often, but there you go.
So just been rear-ended about 7:45. Silver car's gone into the back of me. I've gone into the back of this car. And we're just taking insurance details right now.
Well, what a day. Good afternoon. It is Friday at about 5:20. As you'll have seen from the scene before, I was driving to a meeting this morning and was stopped in traffic in a queue at the traffic lights and basically got rear-ended by a car at speed. Basically got thrown forward, came back, smashed my head against the back of the car seat, and yeah, let's just say my head is throbbing, my back is hurting, my neck is hurting. Been to the doctors, got checked over. They say I've got a concussion. I've got some whiplash, which could get worse over the next few days. My car's in the garage, can't drive it. So all in all, it's been a pretty disastrous day. Life sometimes happens this way. Just thankful to be in one piece, albeit a little bit battered and bruised. But yeah, kind of written off the day. With that said, in terms of the markets, non-farm payrolls result was out today. That signaled bearish news for US dollar. The number came in less than expected, so there's been some offers to US dollar, which has helped my US dollar Swiss franc trade. I'll show you on screen in a moment. And in terms of my Australian dollar Japanese yen intraday trade, that is progressing northwards slowly. Very slowly, but it's heading in the right direction. So I'll put those on screen in a moment. But yeah, not feeling great, feeling pretty tired. I've had concussion in the past from my time doing Thai boxing and whatnot, so I kind of know what it's all about. But you just got to be careful with that kind of stuff. Yeah, got hit at speed. Not a nice experience. Really disorientated. Not really knowing what had happened. Couldn't figure out where the emergency lights were in the car. Had to even switch the engine off. So going to be taking it easy, certainly for the next 2 or 3 days, while I get myself back on track. But just thankful to be here and to be in one piece. So first up, FOREX Factory, US dollar non-farm payrolls number came in at 145k. So yeah, less than was anticipated, and what that's done in terms of the US dollar. As you can see, this is my US dollar Swiss franc trade on the intraday, and yeah, was nearly stopped out, kept in that trade by 2 pips, and then it's been offers to US dollar, bids to Swiss franc. That's really dollar weakness as opposed to Swiss franc strength, but potentially now the news as a catalyst could see a push down into the bottom of this daily downward trend line and to hit target 1, but we'll see. Be looking at next week for that now. And then here's Australian dollar Japanese yen. Again, this trade was under pressure. We're now trading back above the 250 simple moving average on the intraday. So it's looking highly probable that this trade next week will progress up to my initial target, but as always, time will tell. So that's pretty much it for the week. In terms of reviewing, I should say, the SIG1 trades, they've all been under pressure a little bit this week, but Friday afternoon looks to be back on track. I'm going to wind the video up now for this week and have a good rest over the weekend. We'll be back next week, hopefully feeling a lot better after today's, well, what shall I say, surprise incident this morning. Hopefully next week feeling a lot better and a lot, well, ready for the market and ready to get back on the game. Closed doors, I'm a fool for your love.